What's up guys, Mike here, and welcome back to another My Hero Academia review. Now this week's chapter is 134, and again, like I've said the last couple chapters, it is more of setup, more progression in the story than it is actual, climax material. But we're definitely getting there, we're definitely approaching as the story goes on, and we do get a lot of information in this chapter and a little bit of more clues onto what's going on behind the scenes and what will be the actual climax of this arc. We kind of can see that it's leading toward a large battle with the 8 Percepts of Death as the heroes are gathering together at the end of the chapter, but I think there's going to be a bit more to it, especially with the new addition of the villains in Shisaki's group. Also, we get a little bit of Kirishima stuff today, which I will talk about in a minute, but it was some good quality development from a side character, and making him more into a definite kind of main character, if I would say so. I guess the class of 1A is kind of all the main characters, but there are a certain group of characters that definitely get more spotlight than the others, like Izuku, Ochako, Ida, but now Kirishima is kind of coming one of those, so I really like that, and saying that, let's get into the review today, guys. So our chapter starts off with Kirishima fighting that thug from last week, and we basically thought it was over at that point. Well, we didn't really think it was over. It's kind of at the climax this week, and at the beginning of the chapter, Kirishima is in his new transformation mode, his extreme invincibility, kind of whatever you want to call it. And obviously this mode is extremely powerful. It can counter a lot of quirks very well, including this guy. But there are some weaknesses to it, because not only does it have a strong counter to a lot of quirks, but it also has a large weakness for a lot of quirks. Because if you think about it, quirks like, well, what I said before, Shigaraki's quirk can pretty easily disintegrate him, and if the only thing that he's using is brute force, which will work on a lot of people, like I said, it will fail on others. Like, well, if I had to think of another one, I'd probably think of Todoroki. If they were to freeze him, there wouldn't be much he could do besides try to break out of the ice, which, is a strength thing, I guess, brute force or whatever, but if he has enough powerful abilities to freeze, then there's not much that Kirishima could ever do. So I'm just saying to keep an eye out for that. There are always counters as there are upsides to quirks. And we do see the downside to his quirk that he can only use it for 40 seconds for this new transformation. But either way, I think that 40 seconds is kind of mostly whatever he needs, unless there's going to be another guy who's giving him a lot of power for brute force wise. Saying that though, we do kind of see Kirishima leaning towards the style of not using crafty tricks, but sticking to the brute force that he really is based around and what his quirk is based around. And I think that is a good idea for him, but I do think that he should maybe throw a few tricks in there like everybody else has. I don't know how much you can do with just hardening, but maybe he could think of a few things. I think that there would be definitely something with every quirk that you could probably do. I mean, even the thug villain that he was facing off today came up with some new moves on the spot. It's kind of clear that this guy isn't really a polished hero or a polished quirk user. He's really not used to using his quirk yet. He actually made this really cool move like the concentration point, where all of his blades kind of came out at the same time and in the same area and directed right towards Kirishima. And I thought that was a really good move. It looked really good as well. And I think quirks like that are actually really interesting, especially the way that villains are able to adapt them to certain scenarios and stuff like that as well. I will say though, this fight was really good. It got me excited again, got me that My Hero Academia feel, especially at the end when Kirishima pulled out the red gauntlet and finished him off. That was one of the best moves I think I've seen from Class 1A, not just purely for flashiness, but just for style. I mean, it looked really good on the page, the artwork was really well, and I really liked the shading that Hirokoshi did on this panel, and it made it look really epic. Now, Kirishima taking down this Main Street thug may not seem like that big of a deal at first, but we do actually get the first introduction to this quirk-enhancing drug, so I think it is more of a feat than you could actually think. It may be a bit underestimated by some. He does actually get a lot of credit in the media for this, and it actually makes sense because it was something to be proud of, especially on one of your first days in the training. He's actually going to have a good name as the hero, same as Ochako and Sue as well that we see later on in the chapter, but right at this point, the kind of villain guy is giving up and he's crying again and he's gone back to his normal self, or so we think, and he's actually kind of a fucking asshole if you're not already seeing that. But we do see in the last couple chapters that he's been trying to trick Kirishima with this little crying little bitch mode or whatever, and he tried to pull it out again, and then Kirishima's actually being a nice guy, as we know, and he's like, yeah, well, it sucks, but I can relate to you, and everything's not so bad, maybe you'll pull things together eventually. And this guy's like, I don't give a shit about your story, and then he tries to escape, and you know, the big fat gum then comes in and rescues the day. And now his quirk is really, really cool, but it's also got some questions about it as well. I know that he can submerge anything. It wasn't really specific on the abilities of submerging, like how much he's able to submerge or what happens to it when he submerges them. Does he actually completely, you know, paralyze them? Does he cause them not to move? Does he deactivate their quirk? What does he do? Because if this guy got submerged, why wouldn't he just use his quirk while he was inside the big fat gum and try to, you know, stab him through every single spot in his body? And if he did that, you know, maybe he would kill him. And that's just something I was curious about in this chapter. If you guys got any thoughts about this, definitely let me know in the comments below, because I don't know how his quirk's working, but I'm gonna have to leave it up to you guys to let me know. So at the end of the fight, Kirishima, like I said earlier, he gets some well-deserved praise, not only from his peers in the Hero Society, but from the people that he saved on the sidewalk. And he was even mentioning to himself in the fight that they were kind of just standing there watching for some reason. And civilians are kind of stupid in that point. I mean, villains are really, really looking for hostages and stuff like that, especially when they're desperate for a win, when they're down like that. So I think that here, the people there were kind of silly. But either way, they gave Kirishima the well-deserved credit that he earned in that fight. And same with Big Fat Gum, who let him know that, you know, one day you're going to be a really, really good hero. My debut was nothing like this, so one day you're going to have some really, really good stuff. We also get a little bit of a clue onto what's going on with this drug. I have theorized a bit in the past couple chapters on what I think it is and where I think it's coming from. I originally thought that maybe it was from that girl, the little girl that Izuku actually remembers in this chapter, and that Overhaul is using for his own gain. I thought that it was some sort of extraction from her blood or from her body to be able to manufacture this quirk enhancer. But I'm really not sure whether that's the case for the quirk enhancer or the quirk eraser. It could be either one, but it seems like it may be more of the quirk eraser. I know I'm kind of going back on what I said last week, but it could be either one. But I think it's more the quirk eraser, because we do get a little bit of a tidbit on this drug from Big Fat Gum, or whatever his name is, and he says that it's actually only lasting not very long now. The one that the villain used, it didn't last very long compared to the actual drug, which normally lasts 2 to 3 hours from the US market, and this must be from some cheap knockoff or something. So this is very interesting. It could be, in fact, that they're creating the drug or copying the drug from the US, but I don't think they originated it, because it does seem like this drug has been around for a while. So it makes more sense that they actually created the quirk deactivator bullet in some sense that will deactivate a person's quirk, but we don't know how long. And we do see that Sun Yu's quirk is still inactive this chapter, and when they actually pick up the gun from the villain, they're not sure what's going on there. There's no bullets in it, and there's definitely something off about the gun, and they're definitely trying to make this a point. So I'm wondering what kind of special guns will have to be used in order to fire this bullet, and maybe it actually does revolve around one of Shisaki's gang's quirk to create guns or to create bullets or something like that that are able to deactivate quirk. That seems like a bit of a weird quirk, but that's the only thing I can really come up with at this time. If you guys can think of anything, let me know in the comments below, like I said earlier. This chapter definitely has an eerie feeling with it. There was a lot of characters kind of on edge, like especially Izuku when he's kind of thinking about the girl, and certain other characters when they're thinking about what's going on and kind of the evidence that is presented before them. There's even a line that says, you know, something's seemed really, really bad right now. So we're kind of ramping up for something big to happen, it seems like. Something bad is going to happen. Overhaul's plan might just come right out in the open, or, you know, they might just act on it right away. Who knows? But it's definitely coming up in these next couple chapters, and the heroes are kind of sensing it a little bit. As you can tell by the meeting at the end of the chapter, it was kind of a surprise for all of the Izuku's gang, Ojikosu, etc., to be able to meet up with these heroes. They didn't really know what was going on, but they did see them all, and they're all together talking about the investigation. And Night Eye, obviously, is the leader, and he's going to provide some information on what's going on. It seems like Night Eye actually might have put the pieces together when it comes to Overhaul's plan, perhaps, but I definitely don't think that he will see the villains alliance joining up with Overhaul's gang. I think that will definitely be a shock for most of the heroes, but I do think that All Might has actually probably, Night Eye has actually probably figured out a few pieces of the puzzle when it comes to this drug, this quirk deactivator, and maybe these thugs on the street. Maybe he's figured out a few pieces of the puzzle, connected them. I'm not really sure at this point. I'm really, really interested to see how this goes, but I don't really have any evidence to actually make any theories right now. There's not really enough out there. But either way, it's interesting to think about for sure. Anyways, guys, that's all I got for this chapter. It was relatively simple, not too complex, a few clues here and there to add to the progression and to the theorizing, like I said, but not really enough to provide a solid theory. But if you guys can think of something or point something out that I may have missed, let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed, like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you on the next one. Peace.